Hello, I'm Eric Bainan. I'm going to be your host for this session. I've run a sustainable growth company for 15 years with the purpose of advancing innovation for sustainability. And we've been working with Manitoba over the last 24 months on their protein advantage strategy and helping to advance that. And I'm really excited about this conversation today because I deeply believe that this strategy offers an incredibly unique and high impact opportunity to drive economic growth and deliver the sustainable food that we need in the coming years. I'm excited about the panel we have together here. I want to introduce them. We've got Dori Gingerra-Beauchemin as the Deputy Minister at the Ministry of Agriculture in Manitoba. We've got Susie Miller as the Executive Director of the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Crops. We've got Dixon Gould, who's the chair of the Manitoba Protein Consortium and really been one of the key stewards of this work over the last 24 months or so. David Wiens, the chair of the Dairy Farmers of Manitoba, and a key player too, as we've been putting the strategy together. And Ron Kozlowski, who runs Canadian Manufacturers and Exporters based in Manitoba. And as we dive into this conversation, there will be the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen is open, and we can have a live conversation while the panel is underway. So please feel free to use that and pose any questions or comments that come to your mind. Dixon, I'm going to throw the first question over to you. Can you describe for us what is the vision of Project Aspire and the Manitoba Protein Advantage strategy?
Yeah, I think we have a very strong vision for the sustainable protein strategy. We feel Manitoba has several strategic advantages and has a real opportunity to become a global leader in sustainable protein production and processing, and that it can be a major economic driver for the province of Manitoba while improving climatic change results. Project Aspire, is more specifically strategically implementing the Sustainable Protein Action Framework that we developed over the last, over the last 18 months. And this framework is really a collaborative event with industry stakeholders, and it's about really accelerating sustainable protein results in Manitoba in meeting our goals.
Great, thanks, Dixon. Dori, I'm gonna, just feeding off of what Dixon just said, from the province's perspective, what do you see as the opportunity for sustainable protein, and linking that with the vision that Dixon described there? Can you provide any sort of additional color?
Thanks, Eric, and certainly it's great to be part of this very illustrious panel and just profiles the kind of capacity that we have in Manitoba for leadership and innovation. Dixon talked about achieving goals. Certainly that's something the province takes very seriously. And probably just to ground some of the conversation for this morning, just, to remind folks that we're well along our way of achieving goals that were identified in the strategy. We've probably achieved over 50% of the goals already, attracted $753 million in new investments, added 840 jobs. And so all of this is really kind of the wind in our sails right now to push this target of being the global supplier of choice for sustainable protein. But we know that this doesn't happen in a vacuum, that it really does need research and innovation as well to be able to keep meeting and responding and leading in this very competitive world of protein. And early on in our, people recognize the CAP program, Ag Action Manitoba, our minister identified that it would really be important to allocate at least 33% of our research and innovation fundings to support protein. We knew, and supported by all of our partners, we knew that research was fundamental to keep driving that. And so since 2019, we've invested almost $6 million in research, particularly to advance protein, everything from, you know, extraction to the impact on livestock and crops. And again, you know, a little bit about blowing our horn, which I think is important to set the tone. We've met that 33 and are really now at 58%. So I think, Eric, you know, the goal in government is to continue to be a part of this collaborative effort to move along and yet identify that there are critical pieces that need to be supported by the different players in the industry. And so I look forward to that part coming out today as to who plays what role in it.
Yeah. Well, thanks. And I'm going to pick off of, you sort of mentioned how, you know, this is a globally competitive, you know, sector at the moment, and there's a lot happening. Susie, I'm going to maybe take the next question to you because you've got more of a national perspective. You've been at the table from the very beginning with the Manitoba Protein Strategy, but you're also at the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Crops. From what Dory said there, you know, can you provide a bit of a national perspective on the importance of sustainable protein, what's happening, you know, with global markets, why it is important to actually be, you know, have this as a priority, and what the opportunity is as we shoot for the vision, because the vision is obviously a big vision.
Thanks, Eric, and thanks everybody for the opportunity to be part of this. At the Canadian Roundtable for Sustainable Crops, first of all, just an explanation of who we are. Our members include everybody from input suppliers, farm organization, grain marketers, food companies, anybody who's interested in looking at and working together on the opportunities and needs related to demonstrating sustainability in the marketplace. And we just completed what we call a white paper, which looked in depth at the drivers behind the need to demonstrate sustainability, to show that we're sustainable in order to undertake premium markets. And all markets aren't requiring this, but many are and more are. And it is a distinct advantage in the marketplace to be able to show that the products that you produce are deemed sustainable. And what we found was that this advantage that comes from demonstrating sustainability is only growing and continuing to grow. In some cases, it'll be table stakes. In other tables, it'll be positioning. So this particular initiative that Manitoba Consortium is undertaking is really exciting because it's on the cusp of being able to take advantage of that growing interest, both in Canada and internationally.
Yeah. That's great. David, have you seen the similar from the dairy side, from what Susie spoke about, the similar sort of trends and drivers, I guess, from your industry?
Oh, for sure. What Susie is talking about certainly resonates with the work that we've done. And I'm going to go to, you know, the work that we've done at our national organizational level at Dairy Farmers of Canada. They've done some research there, and it's very clear that sustainability is extremely important to people. And out of that, last week at Dairy Farms of Canada, we had the announcement that that our goal is to be carbon neutral by 2050. So we've got our work cut out for us. And so what we're doing in the province, you know, this whole sustainable protein project really fits in well with what we're doing nationally. And you know, from some of the discussions that I've had with one of our processors markets, milk protein ingredients worldwide, they really look to, you know, the Canadian brand is really important in terms of image and the fact that it is sustainable. And so for us as a province now to kind of lead the way on this, I think is going to it's going to set us up going into the future, because I think to not be sustainable in the future is simply not an option.
Yeah, Yeah, and Ron, just I'm going to draw the link there too, because it's interesting. We've got, with Susie who's speaking from a Canadian perspective, and obviously internal external links. David is on the Manitoba side. Ron, you deal on the international side as well with Canadian manufacturers and exporters. Is there any additional points that you would add to what Susie and David have said from that international perspective on the importance of sustainability?
Well, on the importance of sustainability as well as this initiative, generally speaking, absolutely. First of all, CME is our mission in Manitoba and across the country really is helping manufacturers grow, which is a really nice comparison with when you're talking about growing plants or animals sustainably. But we are a national organization with headquarters out east, but I run a division in Manitoba. As a part of that team, I'm on the executive of National, and so it's nice to have the resources of National as well to bring to bear on this over here. But we have about 40 people over here that try to help us with our mission, and I think this is really important because ever since I was a child growing up on the farm, I realized that we do a lot in area of we have strength in agriculture for sure. I often wondered, though, when I got into the manufacturing world where I've spent most of my time, why is it that we don't have more value-added products in the manufacturing sector, and what could we do differently? And I think this initiative speaks to that, and so I'm very excited about that as well. But so manufacturing, though, needs an environment globally that's competitive, and so we live in a very global world when we're competing with selling our products and our services overseas. And so my background, and then specifically with respect to workforce development, which is the group that I'm chairing in this initiative, the people are really key. So if you don't have the right people with the right skills, from the front end people to the highly qualified people, all the plans that you have in place really are going to be underachieved because you don't have the talent you need to do that. So that's a really important critical piece of all of this. Manitoba is in the middle of nowhere. So in some respects, geographically, and yet we say we're in the middle of North America. But so I think to be understanding that our environment, we have some strengths in Manitoba, which are, we're small enough to be well connected. And the group here is representative of that. That we can get things done because we know people, one-on-one over here. And I think that's an advantage we have, and we can collaborate that way. As far as sustainability goes, as CME, we've taken a net zero position as well. Manufacturing has generally actually done very well in terms of reducing greenhouse gas emissions through technology, through work efficiencies, and so on, things that we've supported at CME. And so we've actually seen an improvement over there, but our goal is to continue working in that regard. And as you already said, our customers across the world increasingly are looking at what that means and how are we doing in those areas. So I think that is something that we certainly are seeing as being very important for us as well.
That's great.
Eric,
yes,
I just wouldn't mind just commenting on some stuff that Susan and David brought up.
Mm-hmm.
Our operations, we're primarily our primary business is hog production, and particularly weaned pig production, and the comments about product positioning, our people that we provide with our weaned pigs as far as product positioning. We are getting a ton of questions about what our practices are, whether it's animal welfare practices, what are we doing with our manure, what are we doing to reduce water, what's our climatic action plan, and it starts off as as a discussion, but this thing is moving so quickly from being positioning to actually where it's going to be table stakes. Like if you're not doing this and you're not moving in this direction, you're going to find that your market opportunities are going to be substantially less. And so you know, I think from our organization and the producers that we work with, you know, we're really looking at this as you know, as a really an important differential opportunity. The other thing that's really important is not only is our suppliers requesting information, but now our bankers are requesting information. You know, we have, you know, if we go back a year ago when we asked them about ESG, and you know, they were, well, we've heard about it, but today, when we do our capital plans and when we look at what we want to accomplish in the next year, now we are being requested to, you know, what is our sustainability goals? And so this thing has moved. This is moving like lightning through our industry, and so I'm sure David is seeing that, and Susan are seeing that as well. But it's moving quick.
Yeah.
Eric, if I can also jump in on this, and certainly, you know, the privilege we have in government is sort of to be able to have that, you know, more broader view, working with a number of commodity groups. And the piece that gives us confidence in having the target of being a supplier of choice and the global go-to for sustainable protein is because our commodity groups and have worked hard and were early adopters as to being able to assume that responsibility for sustainability versus having it imposed on them. So you've got two examples here, both David with the Dairy Farmers of Manitoba. And I mean, you got to recognize that that national effort, of course, also supports it. Dairy Farmers of Manitoba, Manitoba pork producers, Manitoba egg farmers, for example, out early in the gate for, and not easily, excuse me here, not easily, you know, doing this. I mean, this all takes bold leadership. Like, because to start talking about the requirements for sustainability when perhaps a number of producers are just looking for financial viability, it takes bold leadership. And so with that kind of innovation in the minds of our producers already, that's what gives that, you know, that's what gives me the confidence from a government standpoint, how we'll be able to collectively achieve this. So it has been work over many years that, you know, that allows us to be able to position this in now where we're going to be talking about today, how industry is going to take over implementing strategy. So just a few points from that more around the second table view.
Yeah. Well, thanks, Dory. And I'm going to key off of, I'm glad you sort of, when you think of that, what you mentioned, the bold leadership, because it's an aspirational goal, but it's not an easy one to articulate. And I'm going to pose this question to Susie and David, because they were really involved with the industry effort to roll up their sleeves and, in essence, get after all of the elements that were needed to be part of that, of the strategy, you know, and because it's a comprehensive strategy. You know, Ron mentioned workforce. That's one element of it. There's obviously all the sustainable protein, you know, practices that need to be implemented by industry, but as well, there's things, you know, elements of measurement, there's elements of finance, there's elements of policy. They all need to be looked at. And in fact, there's 10 of those sort of macro buckets in the strategy. But I'm going to ask, you know, and maybe David, I'm going to pose this question to you first, is the effort, really every protein sector was involved with the creation of the strategy. Can you share a bit about that process? And as it fits to what Dory was just saying about, you know, you know, a lot of these sectors are acting already, but the benefit of coming together, you know, we've got livestock, we got crops, we got other stakeholders as well at the table. Can you just sort of give us a bit of that history of the creation of the strategy?
Yeah, and that's a really good point. You know, in the past, we have each of us separately have already done a lot of work on these files, but it's been separately. And so when we first came together, we were many different sectors within agriculture and all doing our own things. And that's what I really appreciate about this. And I understand the value of actually working together to be collaborative about advancing, the sustainable protein in the province. And that's what really inspired me right from the start of this process when, I'm hearing the stories of other sectors talking about the things they've done, talking about what they want to achieve and realizing, actually there's a lot of similarities here. And what I've really come to understand through the work that we've done together is that we're not, this is not just about being competitors and hoping that my protein is the one that's going to be really take off on all of this, but rather that this project is really a tide that's going to raise all the boats so that we're all going to benefit from it. And so to be able to tap into what is happening across the board. So for example, from the dairy sector, well, we're certainly not an island here, and so the way in which we would relate to forage and grasslands really matters. So it's not only our end product, but also our input. So we've got protein involved at both ends of what we do. And so this is what brings it all together. And I think that what's going to be important here is, again, having that brand that when you think of Manitoba, you think of sustainable protein, you think of, those images are very, very strong today. And this is exactly what people are looking for.
Susie, do you want to, maybe I'll just put it to you. Do you want to add anything to what David said?
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the process, I thought it was very exciting. We'd get these big maps in the mail with everybody's thoughts. And to me, Dory mentioned the advantage that comes from having a broader perspective. And each of us in our organizations, companies, work to forward the priorities of our members. Mm-hmm. And sometimes it's challenging to see where those priorities intersect and where we can actually have a whole that's better than the sum of its parts. And this was an approach that I think has opened a lot of eyes. We've learned a lot from each other. And I think the product is much better because it does. Everybody around that table had different knowledge, different background, different strengths. And we were able to bring it all together with the help of experts like yourself to develop a comprehensive approach that identifies the priority areas and speaks to everybody along the chain, whether it's the producer, the grassland and forage specialist, or whether it's researcher and the manufacturer. So this approach of cross-sector and through the supply chain interaction has made Project Aspire what it is.
Yeah. That's great. And I mean, Dixon, I'm going to pull this. You mentioned, some of the pressures or the questions you've gotten around elements like manure. I know through this conversation, and this gets to this importance of working together and cross collaboration, is the byproduct use. And in some ways, it's risen to the top as one of the most important things for everyone. And that's really something where people have to roll up their sleeves together to actually to figure out solutions around. But Dixon, I'm going to, as I sort of frame it around byproduct use, just to use the manure example, what is underway right now in terms of the implementation? How are we mobilizing around the strategy? Can you share some light on that to get after some of these, particularly some of these bigger items that, where it is beneficial for everyone to work together on?
Well, exactly. I think that through the Project Aspire and I referred earlier to the action framework that we put together. Within that action framework, we had 10 functional areas, and within those 10 functional areas, and just to give you an idea, like innovation is one of the major ones in there. There's also the whole principles of circularity, and recycling. But within those 10 functional areas, really what we're trying to accomplish is, we have tactics within each functional area. So within those 10 functional areas, we actually have approximately about 119 tactics or initiatives that make up, that if we accomplish these actions and activities, that's going to get us closer to our goal of being the global leader. And so one of the strategies that we're looking at, and we've all been through, particularly on this, with this forum here, all of us have participated in the challenge dialogue process. And one of the things that we want to do is to bring some structure to how we solve these complex issues, whether it be on recycling or new byproduct. Byproduct one is actually a kind of an interesting one because it really never stops. Once you develop a byproduct, or you've got a byproduct out of your main product, well, let's try to find the best value add that we can do to that. And then once you find the next value add, you come back and you say, well, what can we actually do better on that? And we've seen that in the dairy side with their byproduct plant that they've got with their milk plant in Manitoba. The new one that they built is just how efficient they are on taking out byproducts and developing new products for it. And within these functional areas, as I talked about, we are setting up roundtables with a rapid challenge dialogue that brings structure, and through the resources of the province and our design team, we're able to find collaborators and sort of get the best minds around trying to help us solve the problems. And obviously one of the issues on byproducts is making sure that we have a good research and research community that can help us and develop it. Things that Ron Kozlowski's group is doing on their side on the manufacturers, where basically they focus on process management and lean training and how can we become more efficient. The other thing that's really interesting when we talk about byproducts and circularity is the intersection between plants and animal protein. If you take a look from our standpoint, presently we inject all our manure into the cropland. That cropland can go to produce soybeans, it can produce peas, it can produce whatever crop that we want to do. And then what happens is that crop gets processed and certain attributes are taken out of that crop. And then either, right today, the big one on soybean and canola is the oil content. And then the byproduct of canola meal comes back into the hog production. So we really have a very circular production. The Roquette plant is a great example. Look at all the byproducts that are going to be coming out of that plant. Some of them are going to be in the liquid formats. Some of them are going to be, some of those byproducts are going to be used as feed alternatives for the beef industry. Some are going to be used by the chicken industries. Some are going to be used by the hog industry. And even the eggs, we've got people that are producing eggs, and there's certain products from the breaker egg market that comes back into the hog production. So all these things are circular. It's not about, as David said, it's not about competing against one another. It's about growing it for all of us, and our interdependency amongst each other is really highlighted here.
Yeah.
Eric, from what people might coin as a smaller province, you know, and probably some of us on the screen are even related. That's how small this province might be. But it gives that familiarity that gave us a step ahead. We knew, we trusted, we knew where we disagreed as well. And so that discovery process of the strengths and the benefits, the challenges, that was short because of the familiarity. And so when you look at our goal of being a global supplier, and then folks, if all they do is go to the numbers, may wonder how we're going to do it. Well, you know, the power and the enthusiasm, you know, of the members on this screen are just a small example of the machine behind it. So we have the imagination, we have the capacity, we have the commitment, and the structure is just bringing those pieces together. So I would never want to shortchange ourselves because of size, because I think because of that, we probably have some advantages that the big players just can't even pull together very easily. So.
Yeah, no, Dory, I appreciate you bringing that up. In some ways, I've classified when I've spoken with people that it's a Goldilocks situation in Manitoba, where it's not too big, not too small, not too cold, not too hot, where it's a global agricultural hub, but it's got every protein sector at scale operating in Manitoba, except it's small enough that everyone knows each other. So we can actually roll up our sleeves together and get something really important done.
Eric, you forgot the magic line though. Just right.
It's just right. There you go. And I was gonna ask, and I'm gonna, Dory, maybe you can add a short comment on this, and then I'll ask Ron too, because I was gonna ask, you know, one of the hardest things is translating a big vision into action. Right. And that's what's happening right now. We've got the big vision to be a global supplier, a global you know, leader in sustainable protein. Translating it into action on the ground is always very difficult. Dory, the question for you is around the importance, but also in some ways the excitement from your perspective as you know, with government, of having industry at the table in such a strong way, really leading this. I mean, the protein consortium, which Dixon leads, is led by industry players. The strategic advisory group on which Susie and David both sit is all industry players, as well as other stakeholders. Can you speak to that for us?
Sure, Eric. And you know, this kind of, I think its genesis, though, had it actually from day one by picking the challenge dialogue as a process to get here. That was always it wasn't aspirational, it was a requirement. And government comes to the table when they can play a facilitating role. When it's early on, discovery process, you know, some of that we have the ability, certainly provided both financial and human resource to do that. Yet, you know, for us to be able to take advantage, or as Susie says, to even have table stakes, to even be able to get into that market, we knew that if we didn't set it up early on for this to be embraced and for industry to also see it as a requirement, we wouldn't see the success. So for government to play that facilitation role, I'm looking forward to the day that folks on this screen say, now get out of the way. Because it is at a place that industry is demanding that we come with all of those 10 priorities that have been identified to build it out. Like, you know, like Ron's talking about the workforce, right? No better place to be able to have that conversation, that leadership, than folks who are working with the workforce versus those of us who, sure, it's policy, sure, it's legislation, sure, it's funding, right? All of those things. But the reality check for us is when those who live it every day then own it. We will never, you know, this is not about, you know, absconding our responsibilities and stepping away. There is nothing more exciting in this department than being able to capture the opportunities for the whole value chain on protein. It is for, you know, it is our number one. It made it into the throne speech. So, you know, the premier's spoken about the protein strategy. So make no mistake, it's high priority. But the success depends on industry's leadership. And so I'm really excited about the work we're doing in that. It won't be an easy transition. It won't be an easy transition, but I think so much momentum has been built up that there is now a brand around this that folks now want to capitalize on.
Eric, can I add to something that Dory has, you know, her conversation? And I don't think, from industry's perspective, I don't think you can underestimate the contribution in terms of the planning team, et cetera, that the government contributors have made as individuals and as, you know, on the basis of their knowledge, what's possible, what isn't possible. But if I take a look at all of the action items that have been identified, there are ways that government can help and assist all the way through. So I don't think it's a case of either or. I think it's a case of a collaboration and a partnership. You know, for example, one of the key action areas is in terms of training. Now, that training can occur in those companies that have the expertise at the universities, but it also, the whole human resource development component, that's part of what government's objectives are. So I see this as an ongoing partnership with changing leadership, if you want to take a look at it that way. When it's time for the industry to take leadership, industry steps in. When it's time for government, and maybe, as Dory says, the government has done their major part, but I expect to see them at the table on an ongoing basis. And they'll be very valuable. We can't do it, industry can't do it without them.
Well, Eric, one other thing that I think is also important to know is that unless you have a strong foundation, you know, it's really hard to attain your goals, okay? And I think one thing that you've seen here today is the level of collaboration and you know, the involvement on that. But if we actually go one step further, is that, you know, our energy in Manitoba is 99, you know, I'm going to say 99.5%. I might be off a little bit, you know, renewable. So, you know, if you're in processing, or you're in a livestock operation that requires a lot of utilities, you know, you have a real economic advantage, you know, sustainably by having a low carbon imprint because of our renewable energy versus other places in Canada and for the vast majority of US locations. And so we have fundamentally, like, we have a head start, you know, and versus other areas. It's really up to us to take it to the next level. I think the other thing when we talk about government support and programs, our provincial nominee program for bringing in skilled immigrants and people, and not only those individuals, but their families, really brings, you know, opens up the door for us in Manitoba that a lot of other areas in you know, my contemporaries in the US, they wish for something like this to happen. And we actually have it. It's functioning. It's working. It's not something we're talking about doing. It's there. And I think along with that, our central location, you know, as being a transportation hub, you know, we can move north and south without having to go through mountains. You know, we have a very, very efficient transportation network from our location. So in a lot of ways, we're blessed with a really good foundation to allow us to move forward.
That's great, Dixon. Ron, I'm going to pass it to you because I know I had sort of posed that last question to you.
Yeah, if I can just maybe quickly touch on a few things that have been talked about. So maybe what Dory and Dixon just talked about, we also are very interested in the business environment. So for us, the foundation that Dixon talked about, whether it's hydro, whether it's infrastructure related to wastewater, et cetera, these are all things that are really important to be able to have in place for a competitive environment here to do business. And we need the municipalities, the governments, the industry working together, and at the government at the speed of business, along with business and municipalities at the speed of business, to make sure that we don't frustrate the environment and frustrate companies like Roquette and others who are looking at expanding and doing the right things over here for all of this. And that includes smart regulations, clear regulations as well, so that the environment of certainty can be there, because business needs certainty. And that good environment then allows us to do other things like innovation, development of the people that we have, and sustainability. You can invest in that, that when you have the certainty that you do business with. And then finally, on the workforce development, which is obviously the area, I've spent a lot of time in this. That was part of my job at Palliser years ago already. But the importance of attracting, retaining, and developing our people, whether it's youth, attracting youth, whether it's immigrants, whether it's Indigenous people who are underrepresented right now, with a huge opportunity there, but also developing our existing employees. And it's not just professional education or post-secondary education. It's really a lot of work integrated learning, a lot of on-the-job learning, a lot of learning in just-in-time ways, whether it's lean or whether it's leadership or many of the things that we do sort of as sort of sector groups over here. So I think all of this leads to the outcome of a successful and globally competitive Aspire project.
That's great. Thanks, Ron. As we're coming to the end here, I was just thinking some of the trends that we've spoken about. Obviously, we've picked up on the big vision here, but as we've gotten into some of the more specifics, I would almost capture it as the intent to work together to get speed and scale, and ultimately to achieve those goals that are articulated around sustainable protein. I will point it just in our last maybe comment here. Dory, did you have any closing comments that you wanted to maybe share with everyone? And I don't mean to put you on the spot, but just based on all the conversations we've had, some of the, your thoughts are always sort of wrap things up very well. So maybe I might pass it to you for a final comment.
Wow, yeah, that's a pretty big task. However, I think Ron just coined, all of our goals is to create an environment of certainty here that can capitalize on opportunities. And I think the efforts of the individuals are towards creating that certainty. And it has been led though, and I was remiss not to start by saying this when we talked about the beginning stages and the early steps. We talked about Challenge Dialogue was the protein consortium that has come together, and under Dixon's leadership and the fabulous group that he has on that consortium, that that people want to stay on that board because of the influence that they see it happening. I think they are really part of the speaking for the rest of the industry players, how to create that environment of certainty. We've been bold right from day one. This is about both plant and animal protein. There is no backseat in our protein strategy. And to be able to bring those pieces together from a sustainability standpoint as well, where there is synergies in the cycle, I think will even raise the level of achieving sustainability goals. We're there to not only, what is also needed to be able to be that global supplier of choice is we need the smarts and the brains and folks and young folks with that excitement, seeing Manitoba as an opportunity to do that here. We need to be ready. We need to be nimble so that they choose Manitoba as a place for their career in protein advancement, because it's an exciting and an environment of certainty. So for the rest of the session and the summit, we've got tremendous speakers for this summit, and I trust that they'll put some of their specific dreams and challenges as well too. So as we take the next step forward, and I just want to say to, I don't know how many participants we have, maybe 450 from around the world. Stay tuned. Yeah. This is an exciting and a very, as they say, a very green file. And so I just want to thank all the participants on the panel today for joining us, because they just represent so many of the important pieces of protein.
Yeah. Thank you, Dory. That's a great way to sum it up. The protein strategy, everything is public. It's all online, and you can access it. So if any of this has triggered some interest from you as a participant at the summit here, please reach out, because we would love to get energy begets energy, which is what we're after here. So thank you very much, and look forward to enjoy the rest of your summit.
Take care. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you.